start recording. Okay, looks like the mic is working. Kind of peaking a little bit here. Let's turn this down a little bit. Okay, that's better. Okay. So what we just did, we were on the Piskel website, and we go to downloads, and then choose the platform you're on. I'm on Windows. I'm actually more of a Mac user, but I'm relatively comfortable in Windows, and that's what they have in here that connects to the screen. So then it's going to take you to this Google Drive thing, and you're going to have to click download anyway because the file says it's too large to scan for viruses. There's no viruses in here, so don't worry about that. Once you do that, if you're on Windows, the tricky part here is that if you double click on this, it's going to look like you're in the folder, but it's not actually going to work if you try to do it this way. So you have to go back to downloads and right click on the file and go to extract all, because it is in a zip archive. And when you click extract all, you can put this wherever you want. You can see I put mine on the desktop, so it's easy to find. So you can just click browse and click desktop and click select folder. And that's what it'll look like. It just says desktop at the end, and click extract. And I don't know what's going to happen because I already have it. Maybe it'll overwrite it. Maybe it'll freak out. Okay, so yeah, it says this is the same thing. I'm going to skip this because I've already done this. So that's fine. And so now you have Piskel on your desktop. If you have any issues with that, we can take care of it later. You can just watch the rest of the demo, and then we can deal with it when we have time a little later in class. So then once you have it over here on the desktop, you don't need it anymore. So let's go ahead and delete this. I like to keep a very nice, clean downloads folder, and I can get rid of this. And now Piskel is a little bit weird because it's meant to be a web application. So it doesn't have like, well, on the Mac, it's easier. It looks better. But on the Windows, it's like in this folder, and it won't work if you take it out of this folder. There's all these files in here that are actually part of the program. So it's a little bit weird on Windows. It works it's a little simpler on Mac, but that's okay. And so when I open this up, there's my Piskel app. And I can increase the size, and there we go. So I'm going to do a little bit of a demo here, just making the avatar. For this part, you don't need to follow along. You can just watch, and then we'll have some time. We'll take a little break and give you guys some time to work on your own avatar. And then after that, I'll do another little demo on adding your avatar into the Open Lab, which should only take like a minute. But yeah, let's get into Piskel. Let me check on the Discord. Looks like I'm still streaming everything, so that looks good. Hey, Sonora. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna increase the size here. It just looks kind of weird like that, actually. Maybe I'll just make it a little bit taller. Okay, so just real quick, what this app is. As I mentioned, it's free, it's open source, and it's multi-platform, so it's very easy to use in a teaching context because I don't have to worry about people being able to have access to it. I also actually genuinely really like it for what it is. It's a very stripped down, simplified app that's specifically geared towards making art and animation for video games. It's obviously 2D and it's pixel art. So you may not be interested in pixel art as a style for games. That's okay. We're going to use this as kind of a learning tool. And if you want to use another application like Adobe or Procreate or Krita or something like that to create your art, you can do that. That's fine. I've also had students who made 3D stuff and exported Sprite Sheets from a 3D program. So if you are an animation major and you do a lot of 3D work, that's something that could work also. One thing that I'm going to talk about a lot as we go through all the different demos and stuff in the class is asset management. Asset management is one of the most kind of important things in game development and really in any type of multimedia context, because basically when you're making a game, you have a ton of crap. You have a lot of images, animations, you have sound files, you have scene files, you have tons and tons of stuff. And if you move some of it or delete some of it or forget where it is, it's very easy to like screw up your whole process. We also want to make sure that our images are appropriate for the projects that we're making. If you have images that are like super HD high res, they're going to slow your game down a lot. So efficiency is also really, really important in game design. That's another thing that I'll be talking about. But anyway, so that's why we're using this. You don't have to use it for your, your project if you want to use something else. But this is a really easy way and like super simple way to kind of go over creating assets, making art specifically for games, and yeah, I just like it. It's just simple and easy to use. So I have this like little tablet that I'm going to use to draw. I'm not very good at drawing, so I'm sure all of you guys are better artists than I am. But it does really help a lot, I think, for making art to have a stylus. If you have access to something like this, that's great. We have iPads and iPad pencils here. So if you ever want to use something like that, those are available. I know we have like the really big tablets in one of the classrooms over in Fitterman. I'm not sure how easy it is to access those. But yeah, I just use this little thing. They gave them to us a few years ago in the department, and it's actually like super, super useful. So I'm going to use that for the demo. It is a little awkward because it's like sort of, in a different space or whatever. But I'm going to use that for my demos in here. Anyway, so this is Piskel. This is the interface. Hey, are you here for MMP 270? Okay. Okay. So yeah, this is the interface. You can see there's some toolbars for drawing over here. And there's some toolbars for a few other things over here. And then over here, there's a bunch of different like settings and stuff like that. There's also key commands, which are really useful. So if you click on here and you look through, there's a bunch of different key commands. I'll kind of use some of them and talk about them as I'm using them. But you can actually change them if you want to. So those are really, really useful if you're trying to do some animation, trying to do it fast. So the first thing that I usually do is save my file. Actually, we haven't really made anything through this class yet, so we're going to actually set up some stuff. So I'm going to give this file a name. I'm going to call it my avatar. And one tricky thing with this app, no, you're looking for like, that's the name of the professor? What class are you looking for? Sorry, say that again. Is that the name of the faculty or the name of the class? Oh, no, this is game design. No worries. Okay. So another thing that's a little tricky with Piskel is you always want to use the save as. The save button doesn't really work on here. I'm not 100% sure why, but you always want to use save as. Anyway, so I'm going to call this avatar, and I'm going to click save as. And I actually don't really have anything on here, so what I'm going to do is make a new file. So let's see. So I'm going to right click and go to new and folder. And I'll just call this my game. So I'll just, start making a game basically. And I'm going to make a new folder inside here. I like to be very organized. And I'm going to call this art. And then I'll put this inside of my art folder. So I like to be very, very organized so that I can find things later. It's really important also just for like in games are very collaborative. So in a game studio, there's going to be different people working on the art, working on the programming, working on all the different assets. And organization is really important to make it work when you're doing collaboration with a lot of different people. Okay, so I'm going to save this. So this is a Piskel file. This is like, if you've done Photoshop before, this is like the PSD file. So this is like the file that saves all the information about the edits and frames and stuff like that. It's not the file that will go in the game. It's the file that I use to create the art. Eventually, I'll export a different type of image file that will go actually into the game eventually. So I'm going to save this here. I always like to do that first. Then we can go, let's look at the preferences. So there's some stuff I can do in here. I can turn on like a grid if I want to. We can't really see it because it's too small. Let's see. Oh, there we go. We need a color. So I can make a little grid if I want to with different spacing. That could be really helpful if you're designing like a map or some tiles or something like that. We'll do that in a couple weeks. It's also really helpful if you're drawing text. It'll help you kind of like line up where the text is supposed to be. I don't really need it right now. There's also tile mode, which basically means like it goes, it kind of repeats the image, but we don't really need that right now either. So the rest of this stuff looks good. And then let's take a look at the size. So the default size is 32 pixels by 32 pixels. That's pretty small. I'm going to make it a little bigger for this particular drawing, but a lot of games, the art is actually really small because a lot of stuff is, fitting onto the screen. So I'm going to resize this. I'm going to type in here 64, and you can see I have maintain aspect ratio clicked right here. So when I type and change it to 64, the width and the height changes at the same time. If you want something that's wider than it is tall, like a longer rectangle or taller, then you have to turn off this maintain aspect ratio. Resize Canvas content won't really make sense right now because we don't have any content, but that basically means you can resize what you already have on the screen. Maybe we'll go over that later. So then once I'm happy with this, I can click resize. And it doesn't look like anything changed because it's still just a square and I haven't drawn anything. But that's okay. We can see it's 64 by 64. And we can also change the default size here so that when I open it, it'll already open to a size that I want. So if 32 by 32 is not the size that you're working at for your game, you can change that. Okay, these two things we'll look at later. Let's actually do some drawing. Okay, so there's a bunch of different tools. I'll start with the pen tool. I'm just going to draw like my little avatar. So I'm going to draw like a little cat, I think. You can choose a different size. I'm going to choose 4 pixels. Or that's too big, actually. Let's do 2 pixels. And I'm just going to draw a little cat outline. So that's pretty bad. I'm pretty bad at drawing. You guys are probably much better artists than I am. As you know, I'm more of a programmer. But one thing that can be really helpful, so I'm going to delete this. Or can I cut? I don't know how to delete. So let's add a new frame, and then I'll just trash this. So it's really easy to add new frames. And another thing I can do, I can take like a nice circle and make like a little circle, and then go to the next frame. And this onion skin thing is really, really useful for like animation and stuff. So now I can draw my cat based on using this as like a guide. So it's a real circle, and you can see in this preview window, this is for the animation. I'm not doing animation right now, so what I'm going to do is just turn this down to 0, so I don't see that flashing anymore. When we're doing animation later, that preview window will be useful, but for right now, I don't really need it. So let's change a color. I'm going to make like a blue cat. And so I'll try this again. So I'll do a little cat ear, another little cat ear, and there we go. And let's do a little eyeball. And let's do a little mouth and some whiskers. Okay, pretty simple. And so now I can turn off the onion skin. And there we go, that's fine. And so yeah, that's one, I like to use that guide a lot. Then I can just delete this. So another thing that's really useful here that we'll do more when we do animation is I can duplicate this frame. And so if I click on this little duplicate frame, that will create the same exact frame with the same art, but now I can edit the art. So if I wanted to create like a really simple animation, I'm going to delete this in a second, but let's say I erase the eyes. Yeah, I'm going to make it blink. So then I'm just going to draw 2 blinking eyes. And then let's turn my animation back on for a second. And let's do a full screen preview. There we see my, it's blinking. It's kind of hard to the color. Great, but whatever. So yeah, the duplicate function is super, super useful for doing animation. And there's two key commands for this that are really useful. If I hit N, it makes a new frame. If I hit Shift N, it duplicates the frame. If I'm like doing a lot of animation really fast, I can just do Shift N, Shift N, Shift N, and it goes really fast. Okay, so there's a bunch of other tools on here. There's like the mirror drawing where you can kind of draw cool, like there's, you know, it draws the same way both ways. And then if I hold Shift, it does it, you know, horizontally. And if I hold, you hover over these, it'll show you the key command. And it'll also show you these modifiers, which are really useful. So let's see, if I hold Control and Shift, it should do like all four. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so that's pretty cool if you want to make like a pattern or something. Okay, now there's the bucket. Let's go to the bucket and fill in my cat face. So let's choose a different color. I'll just choose like a darker color and fill in the background of the cat. Okay, so that's the bucket tool. It works exactly the way you would expect it to. This Paint All Pixels tool is really, really useful. So for example, I have this like outline for my cat. Let's duplicate this real quick. I have my outline. Let's say you know, that color, I'm like, oh, actually, it's not bright enough. Let's change that color. What I can do is I can go to Paint All Pixels. And if I just, well, so first of all, if I just use the paint bucket, let's choose a brighter blue. If I just use the paint bucket, obviously I have to go through and paint each one. But if I do Paint All Pixels, it's going to paint everything that matches the color in the whole frame. And the cool thing with this is I can even do it across frames. So if I have a drawing and I want to change one color over a whole long animation, I can use Shift to apply to all frames. So I hit Shift, and you can see it changed in both frames. So that's pretty cool. That tool is really useful. Eraser does what it sounds like. The stroke tool is like the line tool. You can draw a straight line. It's kind of like the circle tool I used before. If I hold Shift, it will make it like go to like specific angles, kind of. And then if I hold Control, does that do anything? Doesn't look like it. Yeah, okay. Then there's a rectangle tool, pretty exciting. Shift is a square. Same thing with a circle. So there's a circle, or it's really an ellipse. And if I hold Shift, it stays a circle. The move tool, I can like move stuff around. So that's pretty useful. That's the hand tool. So, you know, if I go up here and I'm like, oh, this isn't centered, or no, move tool is M. I can like center the cat a little bit, or I can off center it if I want to. And this is kind of skipping to the other side of the screen, but there's also a align. So I can align the cat here. And it also has the thing where I can align all of my cats. So if I do Shift, it'll align everything in the drawing. So that's really useful if you're making a long animation, but you need to center it or do something like that. So that's this little thing that looks like an intersection over here. The transform has this little plus button, but it only opens one extra button. So it's a little weird, but just be aware of that. The wand tool selects a shape, so I can like select the inside of the cat and like copy it and then like paste it here, and then I can like move it around. That's kind of scary looking actually. That's kind of cool. And then selection tools, so I can select areas and, you know, copy and paste as well. Another tool that's really nice is the Lightener Darken tool. So if I, this plus minus like little moon guy, if I just like draw, it's just gonna create lighter areas based on the color that's there. So it's really useful for creating texture and detail really quickly. It has a couple modifiers, so if I hold Shift, it'll only do it once, so I can make these lines that are like matching. They're not like changing a lot. And if I hold, what is the other one? If I do Control, it goes the other way, so it darkens. So if I hold Shift and Control, I can make these like darker lines. I can make like you know, details and add some cool stuff to the drawing. So that's a good one. Oh, and then my favorite tool is the Dithering tool. I wish that you could dither. You could do a dither fill, but you can't really. But what you can do, dither basically allows you to choose two different colors, and it paints both of them at the same time. So like if I want to take like, just do white and black, so it'll be obvious. Let's say I want to fill in these eyes with the dithering tool. I can like draw and it fills in this like checkerboard. So that's really useful for creating patterns and textures and stuff like that. And it'll do it at the size of your pencil. So if I make it smaller, you know, right now I'm filling in 4 pixels at a time because it's 2 by 2. So this cat is going to look kind of crazy. Just going to fill this in. I wish you could do a fill with that, but you can't. Okay. Okay, so here's our weird cat. Oh, it didn't really work here. I guess because I'm using like the 2 by 2 and then I'm going over stuff. Let's use the. Okay. Something weird is happening too, where it's like thinking for some reason. Okay, that looks a little better. It looks kind of messed up, but that's okay. Maybe if I. Okay, now it looks weird. Whatever. Okay. Then there's the color picker. You can choose the different colors. A nice thing here is you have these 2 colors, and I can actually draw with both colors. So if I just draw regular, whoops, let's choose a color. If I just draw like this, I get the blue. But if I hold my mouse button, oh, it's not working on my stylus. Okay, I'll just do my mouse real quick. If I do the right button on my mouse, I get the other color. And then there's a key command to swap the colors, which is X. So I can swap those back and forth. So that's really useful. There's also like a whole palette down here. As you use colors, it'll add them to the palette. There's actually a lot of colors because I was using that Light and Darken tool, but you can also select these using the number keys. So if I do 1, it's that black, 2 is white, 3 is one of these blues, and then it keeps going. So that's really useful. I can select the different colors really quickly using the number keys at the top of the keyboard. Okay, I think that is pretty much everything we need so far. I'm going to show you guys a couple more things. Let's see. So you can flip the drawing. That could be useful for doing right and left animations. You can rotate the drawing if you need to. You can clone this layer to all frames. I'm not going to go over layers because I don't really use them that much, but you can use like different layers. It doesn't work exactly the way that Photoshop works. So if you're really used to Photoshop, I don't super recommend using layers here, but it does exist. You can use them. And then there's crop. I'm not going to use it, but you can crop the whole image, so you can crop out the edges. It could be useful for something, but I already want to work with 64 by 64, so I'm going to keep it like that. Okay. So now we're ready to export. So we're going to go over exporting in more detail with animations because there's different ways to do it. But for now, I'm just going to export an image. And so there's a couple ways to do this. So this little mountain guy here is the export menu. And one thing that's nice here is I can change the scale. Normally, you don't really want to scale things up unless you want it to be bigger in the game, obviously. But it can be useful if you design something at like 32 by 32, but then later it's not big enough, you could scale it up a little bit. But the scale, whatever you set it at, it'll stay there even when you close the program. So you might forget that you're exporting stuff at a larger scale. And that happens a lot where there's an image that's really, really huge and it doesn't work with the rest of the game because the scale is messed up. Anyway, if you want to do an animated GIF and put it on, online, you can. That might be fun, but that's not actually what we use in games. So we're not going to use this GIF panel. We're going to go over to the PNG panel. And here, what it says is Sprite Sheet. So a Sprite Sheet is what we actually use in a game. It's one image that has all of the frames of your animation all together. And what the game engine does is it actually chops them up and displays them as an animation. And so this is what we usually use in games. For this, we're not actually doing a Sprite Sheet because I'm just using this as my avatar image. So we'll go over that probably next week when we talk about animation. But what I'm going to do instead, I think there's a way to download just the image. Oh, you can also download an archive of all the frames as separate images. That can be useful. We'll probably do that when we do some UI stuff later. Okay, so what if I want to just get one image, I can go to others and it says export selected frame as a PNG file. So I can just export one frame at a time. I'm going to click download here. Another slightly weird aspect of Piskel is because it was originally a web app, you always are downloading the files rather than like exporting them or saving them or whatever. So when I click download, it's going to bring up this save as dialog, and I just have to tell it where to go. So I'm going to go back to my desktop, go to my game, go to art, and I'm just going to put this in here. So it's avatar 2, PNG. That all looks good. I'm going to save this. And so now if I go to my folder on my desktop, there's my art folder, and here's my avatar. So it looks kind of weird, but whatever. We're going to upload it. And let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much all we have to do for right now. Another thing that you may want to do is import or export files. So this is actually pretty useful. I'm going to open a new window to show this. So if I go to import, I can open like a Piskel file that I created. So, if you saved your Piskel file, that's good. You can just go here and open it, and it'll open it up into, oh wait, did I save this? No, I haven't saved it. You see a star here, that means you haven't saved. So let's save. I'll just hit Command S. Okay, so now let's go back to the other window, and I'm going to go to import, browse Piskel, open. There we go. So it has all the data there, looks the same. But if I forget to save my Piskel file, you can still usually get it. So if I go here, if you're on the same computer, you can look at local saves. Oh, it's not here. Okay, never mind. Let's look at recover recent sessions. Okay, so it is in this recover recent sessions. So let's view this one. There it is. I can load it. And I say, okay. And so if you're on the same computer and you forgot to save something, sometimes it actually saves it in memory and you can still get it. Another thing you can do is just import an image. So if you forget to save the Piskel file, you can go to import. You can browse an image. I'm going to grab this avatar. I don't have all of the data in here, but at least I've got some of it. And I'll click open. And it's going to ask me essentially, is this like an animation or is it just an image? And so if it's just an image, I can just import it as is. If it's an animation, I would change it to Sprite Sheet and tell it what the sizes were. We'll go over that again when we actually make some animation. But this is just an image, and click import, click OK, and there we go. Okay, so that was a lot of information to cover on Piskel, but I think that'll get you guys started. So we'll stop here, and maybe for the next like half hour, you guys can just play around creating the avatars. And then I'll do another quick thing of just adding it to OpenLab after that. And yeah, that should be enough for today. So I'm going to stop recording.